I've edited over 3,000 videos for YouTubers, businesses, and worldwide brands. But when I first started editing, I found it really hard to make anything that actually looked good. And most of all, it would just take me ages. So to help make your life 10 times easier, I've compressed everything I've learned in those 3,000 videos into just 20 lessons that I wish I knew when I first started editing. Lesson 1. When I first started editing, I used this trackpad. And I remember thinking that I was editing so insanely fast with it. I was able to zoom in and out of the timeline really quickly, and well, that was about it really. So as you can imagine, my mind was blown when I started using a mouse that has extra buttons on it. Suddenly, I was no longer able to just zoom in and out of a timeline really quickly, but I could program these extra buttons on my mouse to do a whole bunch of other stuff. I now use the 2 buttons on the top of the mouse to chop off the start and the end of clips. I use these side buttons to copy and paste, and also to add text and coloured solids. And if you want to know how I do this, I'll leave a link in the description to a previous video showing exactly how I set this up with my mouse. So lesson 1 is of course to get a mouse with extra buttons on it. It really has skyrocketed my productivity. Lesson 2. Have you ever opened up a timeline at the start of an edit and felt a bit overwhelmed? You've got this blank canvas staring back at you that you've got to turn into a whole video, and you're not really sure where to start, so you just start doing everything. You put in some A-roll, you start grading it, then add a couple of titles in, then add some music, and then you basically edit the whole first 15 seconds of a video, and then you move on to the next 15 seconds and do everything again. Well, this is what I used to do, and it wasn't just more time consuming, but it also actually fried my brain a bit as well. So rather than feeling overwhelmed and not knowing where to start, it's better to have a systemized approach to your editing. So for my videos, I work one layer at a time. So I'll start by cutting the entire A-roll. Next, I'll add all of the music, and then I'll put in all of the B-roll, titles and graphics, and then I'll add the sound effects. So I'm basically doing whole passes of the video one at a time. So lesson 2 is to stay in one headspace at a time, because by having a system like this, I'm able to get in a real flow of cutting all the A-roll, and then I can go and find all of the music I'll need, which is a completely different headspace to cutting A-roll. And then adding B-roll and titles is yet another headspace, which is more creative. It's much easier to get in a flow when you're doing it this way. And if you've already got your titles or sound effects tab open, then it's 10 times quicker to add them all in one go, rather than having to keep opening up different windows and jumping between each layer of the video. Lesson 3. This lesson is something that everyone learns with experience. So when starting out, it's very easy to feel the need to try and impress with your editing. You end up cramming a bunch of different effects and titles into your video just to try and make it look visually interesting. But this ends up actually having the opposite effect. And in fact, it's nearly never in your videos or your client's best interest. If the person in your video is making a key point about something, a lot of the time it's better just to keep them on screen looking at the camera, because if you start whacking a bunch of fancy graphics on top, then it might distract the viewer from what they're trying to actually get across. So lesson 3 is to let the edit breathe. It's okay for a video to have some downtime without titles and effects. And when you're about to show off your insane editing skills, just take a second and think, is this the best way to illustrate what's actually being said? And if it is, then by all means, go for it. Just make sure you don't over-edit. Lesson 4. So after lesson 3, you might be wondering, well, when is the best time to add titles to a video? Well, it depends on the video. But for a lot of the time, the best time to add titles is when you need to emphasize what's being said, like I've just done there. It really helps just hammer home a message to the viewer when they're hearing it, but also reading it at the same time. And another good time to use text is for separating videos into chapters. So like with this video you're watching, I've got a full screen title that says lesson number so-and-so at the start of each new lesson. If I just kept myself on screen and didn't have these, then the video would probably feel like it was one long slog to get through. I mean, it still might, but hopefully not. But having these full screen titles, it kind of separates the video into different segments, which makes it easier to watch. Lesson 5. If you're regularly editing videos for the same clients, then there's absolutely nothing that can waste more time than dragging in a title preset, changing the font and the colors to your clients, and then dragging in another title, and then changing the font and the colors again and again. What you need to do is save branded titles for each of your clients so that you can reuse them by just dragging and dropping them from the effects panel into the timeline, and they're already branded and ready to go. I now have a set group of titles for each of my clients that I reuse for all of their videos, and rarely have to go searching for anything new unless it really needs it. I also went one step further with this by setting up a system with my iPad, so I just have to tap which one I want on there, and then it will add it straight to my mouse on the timeline, which is the fastest possible way that this can be done. So if you want to know how I set that up, I'll leave a link in the description to one of my previous videos where I showed how to do that. So lesson 5 is to have a set of branded titles for each client you edit for. It also helps cement a brand for the videos as well. Lesson 6. Can you tell the difference between these two clips? My name is Greg. I really like football, and I have a cat, and I think you should hit subscribe and give my video a thumbs up. My name is Greg. I really like football, and I have a cat. I think you should hit subscribe and give my video a thumbs up. The first video made me look really awkward and unconfident, whereas the second one takes that away and is easier to watch for the viewer. And all I did was remove the ums that were clogging it up. Back when I was working for a video production company, we used to make videos for businesses. So we would come across people all the time who weren't comfortable with being in front of a camera. And the number one rule that we had for these videos was to remove all of the ums, because these businesses would actually lose credibility if they looked unsure on what they were saying. And then to cover the jumps in the footage, you can either add B-roll or titles on top, or you can use the smooth cut transition in DaVinci to make it less jarring. If you set this to around 0.2 or 0.3 seconds, then it should smooth out the cut point. Or just scale up the second clip to around 1.4 in size and use the on-screen guides to make sure that the eyes are in the same place so it feels more natural.
It hadn't been done before. I believe it was a world's first video check-in wall. All the components existed, but not all together. It hadn't been done before. I believe it was a world's first video check-in wall. All the components existed, but not all together.
So lesson 6 is to remove the ums. Obviously this depends on the video. Some videos it might be best to keep them in if you want to convey some kind of emotion. But for videos where you want the speaker to look more confident, it's probably best to remove them. Lesson 7. Does my audio sound a bit off to you right now? Well, if I was editing this video 10 years ago, this is exactly how it would have sounded. But now it sounds like this. Can you hear the difference? It sounds so much fuller now, doesn't it? Having good audio is huge for video, and actually having bad audio quality is predominantly worse than having poor video quality. So for every video that I edit now, I make sure I get the audio sounding as good as possible. And rather than making these adjustments to single clips, I do it to each track. So normally track 1 will be for dialogue. So I come over to the Fairlight page, right click on the track, and change it to mono. A good rule of thumb is to set dialogue to mono and music and sound effects to stereo. This is so the dialogue stays central and consistent, and then the music will essentially be spread wider around it, which makes the dialogue easier to hear. I'll then select track 1 and I'll use the EQ to make my initial adjustments. This could be a whole video in itself really, so I'll just briefly show you what mine looks like. I've basically brought down the low and the high end frequencies, and then I select another part of the EQ like number 3 and I set the Q factor to max, and then slide it up to the top and then drag it left and right until it makes a really high pitched noise.
Person for 3 months, which is a kind of typical sort of number that I see.
And then as soon as I hear that high-pitched noise, I drag it all the way down to the bottom, which is basically a way of getting rid of an unnatural tone that's in the audio.
If we press compare low ticket versus membership now, we can now see the person. And if we switch to a membership where they only stay 3 months, you make $147.
I've then got dynamics set up to boost the voice and lower the parts of the audio that don't need boosting. I've then got a multi-band compressor, which does a similar thing to the dynamics. Then I've got a plugin for removing echo, and then voice isolation set to around 50 to remove any background noise. I know that was quite quick, so let me know in the comments below if you want a full walkthrough of how I do the audio in my edits. So lesson 7 is to pay attention to your audio, because it really does make a difference to your video. Lesson 8. Staying on the topic of audio, something that loads of new editors will do is add tons of sound effects at unnecessary times. This can become really distracting for the viewer, and most of all, annoying. Sound effects are really good for adding to the visuals. So if something pops onto the screen like this, that's a perfect time for a sound effect. But if it starts to get used too much, then it starts interfering with the dialogue and it becomes a bit of a mess. So lesson 8 is to not overdo sound effects, and also make sure you bring the audio levels of them down to lower than what you actually think is necessary. So for example, once you've sorted out all of their individual levels, head to the track settings and lower it by another 5 to 10 decibels. This will put it in about the range that they need to be. Lesson 9. If there was one thing that I could go back and tell myself the first time I ever opened up a piece of editing software, is to learn keyboard shortcuts for as many things as I possibly can. Most things in DaVinci Resolve can be done using a keyboard shortcut. So if you're not already using them, try to learn 1 or 2 a day, and then you'll quickly find that they'll become second nature. Some of the basic ones that I use all the time are Shift-Z, which is zoom to fit. This will zoom the timeline back out to show the full timeline, and then if you hit it again, it will zoom back to the zoom level you were at. Another one is Command or Control B to use the razor tool. This will make a cut at the playhead position on the selected clip. And there's also Shift Space. This one will open up the search effects bar if you're on DaVinci version 20.1 and above. And then from here you can search for anything that's in your effects panel. Select it and hit enter, and it will add it straight to your timeline. So lesson 9 is to drag your mouse around less and learn as many keyboard shortcuts as you possibly can. Lesson 10. Once you've learned how to use DaVinci's keyboard shortcuts, you can go one step further and set up your own custom keyboard shortcuts to enable you to do things that you can't actually normally do inside of DaVinci Resolve. I made a whole video about how you can set this up, so I'll leave a link for that in the description so that you can watch that after. But in short, you can use third-party programs to create macros on your computer. Macros will basically do multiple keyboard shortcuts in a row, all really quickly, one after the other. And they can actually be triggered by a keyboard shortcut. So for example, if I was to add some text to my timeline, I would have to open up the search bar, type in text, hit the down arrow, and then hit enter, which is 4 steps. But with a macro setup, I can hit a keyboard shortcut that does those 4 steps in under a second. So here I'll hit Control T, for example, and that's just added the text instantly. So lesson 10 is to become a shortcut pro by setting up your own macros. Again, make sure you watch my previous video on this. That will teach you exactly how to set it up. Lesson 11. When you're working with different brands, you'll get given a brand guide. This will tell you what font to use and which different colors you're allowed to use. And then you'll normally copy and paste the hex code into your title or generator like this to get that exact color. But copy and pasting these hex codes can quickly take up a lot of unnecessary time. So lesson 11 is to save brand colors to a quick access menu. On a Mac, you can click on a color and then open this tab here. Click on these 3 dots and click New, then hit Rename and name it to the brand you're working on. Then head back to this tab, select RGB sliders and paste in the hex code here. Then come back over to this tab and hit the plus icon. This will add the color here, which you can double click to rename. Next, just go through and add all of the brand colors for that brand. And then from this drop down menu here, you can see I have all of these different brand colors all set up and ready to go. So if I need to change the color of something now, I just click on the color, select which one I need, and hit OK. I'm not sure what the equivalent for this on Windows is. Mac has this built in already, but for Windows you might need a third-party app to do this. Lesson 12. This one is really quick and easy. If you want to resize or move the position of an image, instead of using the controls in the inspector, sometimes it can actually be quicker to click on this transform button here. If this isn't showing a little square like this, then just click on the arrow and then select transform. From here, you can use the on-screen controls to quickly move and resize images. This is actually something that I knew about for quite a few years, but I was still for some reason persisting with using the controls to move things left and right. And what's even better is if you have snapping enabled, you can come up here to add guides, and then when you drag your image over the guides, it will automatically snap to them. And you can also hold down the Option or the Alt key to bypass the guides. Also, even if you don't have the guides enabled, you can hold down the Shift key and drag, and it will move in a straight line vertically or horizontally. So lesson 12 is to use the on-screen transform controls more. Lesson 13. After resizing or moving an image, you might not notice that it is actually leaving an empty part of the frame because the default background in DaVinci is black. So if you come down to this button here, open up View a Background, and you've got these 4 options. I set mine to checkerboard because that's the only one where you're pretty much guaranteed to not blend in with the background. If you do accidentally leave the View a Background exposed, it won't actually be in the final video that's exported. It's just there as a guide for you. So lesson 13 is to use the checkerboard View a Background. Lesson 14. Have a look at these 2 timelines. This is timeline A, and this is timeline B. Which one do you think looks easier to edit with? It's timeline B, isn't it? Because the clips are color-coded. The minute I started color-coding my clips, it made my life so much easier. I have A-roll set to blue, and images and colors set to green, and titles set to orange. So now, just at a glance, I can see what things are, and it means I can navigate around the timeline so much quicker rather than just a blanket of blue. So lesson 14 is to color code your clips and use the same colors for each of your edits so you get used to it. A quick way of doing this is to set each track up to be a certain color. So just right click on a track here, go to change track color, and then pick which color you want. Also, if you open up the keyboard customization menu and come down to edit timeline, under clip color, you can set keyboard shortcuts to different colors. So I've got my numpad set up to a few of these, so I can quickly change clip colors if needed. Lesson 15. When I used to zoom into footage like screen recordings, I would have to come to the inspector, set a keyframe for the zoom and the position, move a few frames along, adjust the zoom and the position to set another keyframe, and then play it back, realize it's maybe too fast or too slow, and then have to adjust all of the keyframes to get the timing right, and then play around with the curves to try and make the animation look smooth. And doing this loads of times on an edit would take up so much time. So that's why I built a preset for zooming into footage, so I don't ever have to use keyframes again. So if I want to zoom into a clip, I just add my zoom camera preset. I choose my starting position, which is A, and then I click this button to move the playhead to the end of the animation and set the B controls, and that is it. It will animate from A to B, all with custom easing applied that I can adjust if needed with these drop down easing menus, or a custom curve if I need it. The timing as well can easily be adjusted just by setting how long I want it to take in seconds, or by moving the playhead and hitting set start time and then set end time to do this automatically. This now gives me really smooth zoom ins, quicker and easier to edit than ever, and I'm giving away a free version of this preset called Zoom Camera Lite. I'll leave a link in the description so that you can try it for yourself, and if you like it, then it might be worth having a look at my Essentials preset pack, which includes the full version of Zoom Camera and also 20 other time-saving presets to save hours in DaVinci Resolve. So lesson 15 is to stop using keyframes and start using presets to get things done quicker and better. Lesson 16. Sometimes parts of a video can feel like they're dragging a bit. Say for example, you're showing an image on screen like this. This can feel a bit slow and boring. So a simple trick to add some energy to it is to just add a gradual push in, like this. You can also do this with text as well, or with your A-roll like I'm doing now. The key to this is to make it subtle. If it's too fast, then it kind of kills the effect. One way you can do this is by using the dynamic zoom control in the inspector and clicking swap so that it zooms in slowly. But you can't adjust the speed, so a lot of the time it's just too fast. You can also set keyframes to the zoom in the inspector, but this can be a bit of a pain if you happen to adjust timings, which is why I added a gradual animation preset to my presets pack. With this, I can set the start size and the position, and then set the zoom scale speed, so I can have it zoom in at the exact speed I like. And if I adjust the clip's length in any way, it doesn't affect the timing of it at all. It'll always stay the same speed. And you can also use this for the position and rotation as well to get effects like this. So lesson 16 is to add gradual zooms in places that need it. Lesson 17. I know I talked a lot about keyboard shortcuts earlier, but I do actually have one more shortcut to tell you. This one is honestly so insanely good and simple that it just needed a whole lesson for itself. And it's simply Command Tab. Or on Windows, it's Alt Tab. So if you hold down Command or Alt and then hit the tab button and then release both keys, it will switch your window to the window that you previously had open. And if you keep the Command or the Alt key down when you hit tab, it shows you all of your windows. So you can just keep tapping tab until it selects the window you want. So lesson 17 is to use Command or Alt tab immediately. It has sped up the way I use a computer so much. You might not think that using your mouse to change windows takes very long, but it really does add up over time. Lesson 18. Video editing is one of those jobs that requires long hours spent sitting at a desk, and it's important to make sure you're not sat down for long periods of time, not just for your physical health, but also mentally as well. I find that when I'm struggling to come up with an idea or trying to fix an editing problem, the best thing for me to do is just to get up and walk away for about 10 minutes. There's been countless times where I've had a short break and then I come back to my desk and then suddenly I've got an idea, or suddenly I can fix the problem I was having before. It's actually crazy how many times this has happened. On top of this, I make sure to get up once an hour throughout the day for at least 5 to 10 minutes at a time. It's good for your eyes to stop looking at a screen and look at things at different distances. I'll normally play with a little football to get my body moving, and then when I sit back down, I'm refreshed and I'm ready to go. So lesson 18 is to keep your mind and your body refreshed by getting away from your desk regularly. And I'll also add that you should make sure that you don't snack or eat lunch at your desk. Otherwise your brain starts associating your desk with food instead of work, and then you might start getting hungry. Lesson 19. A big part of video editing is learning how to color grade. A good color grade can be the difference between bland footage like this and footage that really pops like this. There's way too many color related things for me to mention in just this video, but one tip I will say is that when color grading A-roll like this, you want to try and make the skin pop. So if you use your vector scope and have your skin on the skin line like this and your background pointing to the opposite side like this, you'll instantly see a contrast between your subject and the background, which really makes them pop. Also, adding a vignette to the whole image brings the viewer's eyes to exactly where you want it. So here's the image without the vignette, and here's the image with the vignette. It's subtle, but really makes a difference. So lesson 19 is to learn how to color grade, and always keep in mind to make your subject pop and draw attention to them with a vignette. Lesson 20. This last lesson is for after you've finished a video, you've sent it off to your client and now they're requesting changes. If you have a lot of change requests, I've found that it's best to work through the changes from the end of the video to the start. So I use a website called Wistia to deliver videos to my clients. This is not a sponsorship or anything, that's just who I use. And in Wistia, they can leave comments and use a timestamp to pin the comment to that part of the video. So instead of working on comments from the start of the video, I will normally start with this comment at the end. This is just because if I'm making changes in the video that are affecting the timing, it then means that the comments for the rest of the video are now all out of time. So lesson 20 is to make clients changes by starting at the end of the video and then going backwards. It took me 10 years to learn these lessons, but it's only in the last couple of years that a little thing called AI has come along to make our lives so much easier. So click on this video to find out the 10 best new AI tools that are built directly into DaVinci Resolve that I use to simplify my workflow and speed up my editing.